What's up, Brian?
Here. Hello, Jonas. Were you in the last one last week
No, I couldn't make it to that one.
or last month?
Yeah,
Oh
no, I
yeah.
couldn't make it.
Jonas was on a trip with me. Jonas, what trip did we do? We did Alpine.
The 7 day, yeah,
Yeah,
uh, in July.
that was sick. That was a good one. We're just waiting for people to join and waiting for Austin to turn his video on. Just kidding, but I do want to see you, Austin.
I
You
haven't had close out
devil.
today, and I'm trying to avoid that.
What did you say? Try to avoid anyway. Okay. Well, I guess we're just gonna get started. Big. All right, so we're gonna talk about rappelling. And hopefully people have some equipment because it makes it a lot easier to actually practice this stuff. Things, if you got my email, you would see things that are helpful to have: harness, rope, couple locking carabiners, ATC. If you have a second ATC, that's super useful as well. A double length sling is nice, and then a prusik loop or some kind of third hand device, and then some sort of bolts. I guess just a brief, my name is Brian. I was doing the last clinic as well. I'm owner and operator of Access the Alpine. And I've been trying to do these free clinics every month to keep myself teaching things in my sort of off season and hopefully teach people some skills that might be useful to their outdoor recreation. So last month we did like different strategies for planning your outdoor adventures and your mountaineering experiences. This month it is rappelling, and next month I don't know what it'll be. I have some ideas, but I'm definitely open to suggestions for topics. But I'll update. I'll send like an email out later about it. So yeah, Access the Alpine is a company I started this like a few months ago, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. And we do alpine climbing, glacier mountaineering, crevasse rescue, all that kind of stuff. Everyone here has done the trip with me, so that's nice. And yeah, we're going to start operation next summer. So check us out, sign up for a trip, and hopefully I'll see you out there. For this course, we're going to talk about rappelling, specifically how to have good habits when rappelling. When you're climbing, all this stuff comes down to habits. So you might not be able to tie a knot every single time and be fine, but it just takes one time to really get yourself into a situation. And it's all about habits. So always tying the knot, and maybe you don't tie a knot one time, but you have a reason for it. You're changing your protocol for a reason. So having good habits is like something you'll hear me say a ton in this chat. I guess to start, some questions about rappelling I have for you guys. I'll just put them in this chat, but the first one is, do you create a personal tether when you're rappelling? And what kind of tether do you use? Do you always use a third hand when rappelling? What kind of third hand do you use? Do you always carry a knife when you're climbing and rappelling? And same thing, what kind of knife do you carry? A lot of this I'm just curious about. And then, do you always tie knots on the end of your ropes? Or do you do some other method of closing your system? So while we're starting this, people can just type what they do. Yeah, what kind of tether do you use? What kind of third hand do you create? Do you carry a knife? What kind of stuff do you prefer? And maybe you don't use a tether. Maybe you just go right to your blade loop. That's cool. Tell me about it. Oh boy, Kevin's connecting. And then to start out, we're just gonna start with personal tethers and auto blocks. So to start, I'll just demo maybe my favorite personal tether. I have a couple different things that I'll rig, but my favorite tends to be the offset basket, which looks like this. I'll use a double length sling, feed it through my belay loop. Also, apologies for the old equipment. This is just my dad's stuff that I'm borrowing. I'll feed it through my belay loop like so. Quite hard to see. Like so. I have the bar tack nice and far away, and then I tie an overhand knot. Like that. That's how I tend to attach myself to an anchor. So I'll have this. I'll attach it to a quad or something like that. And it gives me this little baby loop to attach my belay device to. That's one option. What are some other things people use? Petzl dual connect adjust, nice. So that's like a manufactured one. I don't have one here with me, but Petzl creates one that just girth hitches to your belay loop here. And it gives you 2 attachment points that one can tighten up close to your anchor. Yes, hollow block and auto block. I also do an auto block as my third hand. Let's see, PAS double sling, knot in the middle, auto block, no knife, knots at the bottom, depends. Oh, here we go. Someone said clove. Oh, Austin said clove with the rope or sling or whatever I have. Yes, I use a hollow block. Razor blade taped inside the helmet. No way.
Gotta be ultralight, baby.
Do you actually?
Well, I keep a razor blade taped inside the helmet as like an emergency, but a
Huh.
knife is good to have too, just in case you don't have one. It's always there.
That's good. That's really good. That seemed like a troll.
No.
What else? I use the offset I learned from you. Nice auto block, yes. Cool. Yeah, I tend to use the offset basket hitch. Another option. I used to use this one more, but I've since gone away from it. But I know I've taught a bunch of people this. You just girth hitch to your 2 tie-in points, and then you tie a knot here. The reason I've moved away from it, and you can attach here and here, is this knot just becomes totally welded and really tight.
I think I still have a sling that you tied that knot in for me, and it's completely welded, and I've never been able to undo it.
They last forever with that knot. Yeah, so yeah, because of that, I would probably recommend a basket hitch or offset basket hitch. A basket hitch is just even like this. Again, bar tack far away. And then like this. And that's great for attaching yourself, but it doesn't really give you, you can use this little loop as like where your belay device goes. It's quite short, which is why I like the offset basket a little bit more. And this is sort of the foundation for how we're going to set ourselves up for rappelling. Anyone know why we want to extend a belay device? Why we use personal tethers? Sure, I've told someone.
You can test your wrap, and it's way more comfortable to wrap with it extended.
Test your wrap, way more comfortable. It also makes it so, yeah, someone said it, Hannah said it, keeps a third hand away from your ATC as well. But yeah, those are all good reasons. It makes it a lot more comfortable. Are you guys able to see this? I'm just outside in my barn, but hopefully you can see this. So starting off rappelling, I often don't have a personal anchor attached to myself while I'm climbing up or while I'm going up. I'll only add it afterwards once I'm at the top of something and want to start going down. So if I'm on a long multi-pitch route, I'll often just clove in with the rope on the entire ascent. As you're going up, I would just clove in and I don't worry about having a personal anchor. That could be different for you. Often people like the Petzl connect adjust, and you just clip it in and you don't have to think about it too much, which is nice. I find that if I'm cloving in, it creates less twists in the rope and it makes it pretty clean on transitions. And then once I get to the top of something, then I'll take a second, I'll make a third hand, or sorry, I'll make some sort of personal anchor system, and then I'll fully transition to going down. So rappelling down something. Even if it's just one rappel, I'll often make a extension for that. So what this extension does, it gives me a spot to clip in, and then it gives me a spot for my ATC. To start out, we're just going to go over normal rappelling. So I'm going to take my rope, I'm going to feed it through. We'll do these 2 chains, and then I'll tie a knot. Who knows what knot? Okay. Or it's the elbow fish or a barrel knot. Yeah, a half of a double fisherman, basically. So yeah, a barrel knot with a nice long tail. And tighten this down. Right? This should be nice and snug. Like that. It should have an X on one side and equals on the other. Right? It should not look like this. Right? These things come undone. Right? If I just shake this, probably nothing's going to happen. But maybe it could come undone. That's the point. Hey, look, it is coming undone. All right, so tie it nice and tight. Tie it like you mean it. Make an X, make an equal sign. Tighten it like that, and then throw it down the cliff. All right, an X, an equal sign. What are some other options for closing the system? I could do a overhand on a bite. Right, that's a big honking knot. That's like pretty obvious. It's very in your face. You could certainly tie that. If I tie this, I often just clip it to me. Right, and then the end is with me the entire way. It's not going to get stuck on anything. Sometimes that's people's concern about tying knots. If you don't want your knot to get stuck, then keep it right next to you. Keep it attached to your belay loop or your gear loop, whatever. Have a big knot, clip it to you. And then another option is just not closing the system. You should have a reason for not closing the system. And try and have a better reason than you're afraid of the knot getting stuck. Right? That's often what I'll hear people say. They're like, oh, I don't tie knots because I don't want the knot to get stuck. It's like, okay, well, why don't you just tie a knot and then clip it to you? Or maybe you throw your rope. It's on a route that you've done 1,000 times. It's a single pitch route. You can see the bottom and you can see your ropes on the ground. And it's like a 60-foot climb. You have a 60-meter rope. Okay, maybe make an exception then. In general, I'm always tying knots in the end of my rope. Right? I started this out talking about habits. I'm going to finish this conversation talking about habits. This is a habit. It's really good to get into. Same as like when you clip your carabiner into an anchor, you lock it. That's a habit. You're not going to forget to lock your carabiner if you're just always doing it. Okay, knot lecture over. So you tie a knot, you throw it, you find the middle of your rope. You then come up here. All right, you set your ATC up. You lock that, pull it up nice and high. And then this is where I'm going to kind of have to fudge it because I'm at my dad's house and he doesn't have, well, he did have a third hand. He had a hollow block, but when we last climbed in Colorado, I stole it from him and then forgot to bring it. So I'm just going to use this Dyneema sling, which is fine. It'll just melt. So I wouldn't really recommend having this be your common practice. It would work. It would work if you needed it to, but it would also probably just melt and turn into mush. So get a hollow block by Sterling. They're really nice. And for this, I saw some people comment that they use a auto block for their backup. That's what I do as well. When I say auto block, I mean just literally wrapping it around a bunch of times and then clipping it back into the carabiner. I find that auto blocks have the least amount of friction when you're comparing them to prussiks and climb heists, and which tends to be nice when you're rappelling. If you set up a prussik below you, then it tends to be like really herky-jerky. And that's pretty much your setup. One tip, Hannah mentioned this as well. The order of operations here could be different. You could set up your auto block first. That's totally great. And then go like that. And that gives you a bunch of slack here to set up your ATC. It makes it a lot easier, and it also makes it so you're not going to forget to create your third hand. At this point, right, this is basic rappelling. At this point, maybe it's just me, there's no one else. I'm going to test this system, like Austin said. It works. I've tested it. My third hand works. I've tested it. That's great. I can take this with me. I'll just unclip this from my anchor. Often I just keep this clipped in. Because if I'm going to another station, I'm just going down and I'm just going to clip this into my next set of anchors. All right, so I'll just either have this dangle. Sometimes people don't like that. You can clip it together and clip it to your gear loop on your side if you want. And then you just descend, right? Some notes about this. I pretty much always set up a quad when I'm going to descend and when I know it's bolted anchors throughout. It makes your life so much easier. You're transitioning from a bolted anchor to a bolted anchor. You can keep it attached to your personal anchor. It's very simple, very clean, very smooth. My ATC carabiner, it's nice if it's fat. If it's a pear shape or an HMS, like that, that's nice. That way it doesn't just bind together while you're rappelling. And then your third hand carabiner should be a locker, which I actually just got on board with this. I hadn't found a reason for a very long time why your third hand carabiner should be a locker. And I just recently was told this thing from a mentor, which really got me sold on it. And what he said was if he had a locker, a non-locker, a belay device, and a third hand, the question is, what would you connect where and why? Maybe people can think about that for a while. Like you can think about that in the background. So you have a locker, a non-locker, a belay device, and a third hand. What carabiners go where and why? Anyway, so he told me that, and I reflected on it a bunch. And then I was like pretty stoked. I mean, spoiler, the locker goes on the third hand, but why? We're going to talk about pre-rigging, and then we'll get back to that. So if you've climbed with me ever, you know I love pre-rig rappels. And we're going to talk about what that is and why to do it. We're going to keep this same personal anchor setup. I'm going to clip to this quad. I've fed my rope through. I tied a knot. It's through these chains. Now there's more than one person. Victoria, do you want to come be my assistant? Wow, everyone give it up for Victoria.
Woo!
Austin says hi, Vic. Okay, so Victoria is my assistant, and she also is just relying on my dad's equipment as well, which tends to be quite old. I'll give you this. You can set up a personal anchor. So there's two of us rappelling now. Yeah, this just has that. So just do a offset basket. Nice. Nice, you're listening. I know. Okay. So there's two of us now, which is quite common. Obviously, when you're climbing, you're gonna have another person. This is my go-to when descending. What? Nothing. This is my go-to when descending, is pre-rig rappelling. So I'm just gonna grab your stuff. But okay. Okay. So to start, like Hannah mentioned, I'm gonna add this third hand, this auto block. I'll add a couple loops, clip it to that, and I'll lock it. Now I'll feed a bunch of rope through. Now that I've done that, that gives us both room to set up our devices. So Vic, you can set up right up here. And I'm going to set up right below Victoria, right here. Cool. So you're locked and loaded. Let's bring that up nice and high. And then I'm going to do the same. So essentially, for those not familiar with pre-rigging, essentially it's just setting both devices up at the same time. So right there, looks like so. What are the benefits of it? Anyone know? Not Victoria.
You can check your partner's rappel, make sure everything's safe.
Yes. So that's like our next step, right? I'm locked through both. Victoria, you're locked in through both. Now at this point, right, we can unattach from the anchor. We've both double checked each other. We've double checked this third hand. That's a great reason. Any other reasons? I know people know it. Taking all these people call me.
It closes the system.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I guess like if one person were to go off one of their ropes, then the other rope would be caught up top by Vic's belay device.
Yeah, which is a huge benefit. And we'll test that out right here in a sec. So it closes the system. So for those that didn't catch that, since Victoria's belay device is up here and mine is down here, let's say one of my knots did come undone and this end of the rope just went through my belay device. Essentially, both of these strands are fixed because Victoria is up above me in the system. And then the last benefit I would say is just time. We're both rigging at the same time. We're setting our stuff up at the same time, and it's quite efficient. Compared to if I were to set up and then go down, and then Victoria were to set up and go down, that's slightly slower. But yeah, I think the big two are we're looking at each other's systems. It's a closed system, meaning if I go off an end of the rope, that doesn't matter. And then, yeah, it's quite quick. So at this point, order of operations is essentially we double check each other. So this is through both locked. This is through both locked. At this point, Victoria, you can undo your personal anchor. And while she's doing that, I'm going to undo this whole anchor from this whole quad from the anchor. That way I can take it to my next station. So at this point, I'm going to go down. If Victoria prefers to rappel with a third hand, she can certainly add it if she wants to after I'm down at that next anchor. Or what I can do is give her a firefighter belay from the bottom, meaning I'm just holding onto these strands, giving it gentle pressure. And if for some reason Victoria lost control, I could yank down really hard and stop her from moving down. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And that's because the
Additions?
brake is right here. So pulling it tight would act as
That's the break.
a brake for me.
One other little tip is clipping this in to that carabiner makes it a little more redundant in the fabric. So if this were to get like against the rope or something, you would have this piece as well. Cool. Let's mess around trying to rappel off the ends of our ropes and just see what happens. You can undo your belay device. Hopefully this will like demonstrate to people what exactly I'm talking about, because it's tough to imagine until you try it. So let's go back to you have a locker and a non-locker. Vic, do you know why? Did you think about it?
No, I didn't think about
I
it.
didn't think about it. Anyone else think about it? Locker and a non-locker, you have a belay device and a third hand. What goes where and why? You want the answer? You want the answer?
I know the answer. You
Yeah.
talked about it so much.
Yeah. Do you know why?
No.
Oh, Austin's raising his hand. See, I'm not tech fancy. Austin, go. What's your answer?
I had a question, but I'll also try to answer. I guess because you could hang off of your prusik even if you were unconscious and something bad had happened, and that could be your single point of attachment to the rope. Whereas if you were just on an ATC, like I guess in the system with an ATC and a third hand, the ATC is mostly just acting as like friction, whereas the third hand is actually what would stop you from decking.
Totally. Yeah, if the ATC were to come unclipped, you'd be attached to the prusik. Whereas if the prusik were to be unclipped and you were relying on it, then it would just feed right through the ATC and you'd go to the ground. What was your question, Austin?
So if you're saying that one of the reasons the pre-rig like that is so that if you were to wrap off one strand, the system would be closed through VIX ATC. But like I guess an ATC is not really meant to break that way. It's not like it's in guide mode where the strand is pushing it down into the brake teeth. So would it not just, or at least have the risk of just sliding through?
It will slightly slide through, and we'll do a demo of it right now. It'll slightly slide through, like very gently in our demo.
But I guess not
that little
35
caterpillar.
meters of slide through.
But yeah, if you have like a bunch of rope weight, it's not going to slide at all.
Cool.
So in our demo here, we'll just do it and hopefully that'll answer your question.
Yep.
Yeah, come pre-rig. But I'm gonna have this end be like right here.
But like if she set up her prusik at the beginning,
Well, we won't add the prusik, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't get ahead of myself.
Yeah, we won't do I won't add a prusik either, actually, just to have it be clear. Let's have you go over.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say we double checked. Bring. Sorry. Okay, so we double checked, locked and through both. You're locked in through both. You can undo yours. I'll undo this. And Vic, you can like fully weight your system, which we didn't actually talk about this too much. But she can go off of that anchor because I'm below her. I don't know how strong this wall is also. So I took the anchor. That's totally okay because I'm below her. So I continue down. The end of the rope is right here. I'm going to rappel off of it. And this is where maybe gently hold it in case it does slide a bit. But for sure, if there's a lot of rope here, that rope weight will help with this. For those that can't see, I'm about to wrap off the end. So I'm off the end. And yeah. Are you waiting it?
I'm waiting it, yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't weighted at all.
Yeah. So this is what we mean by closed system. I am weighting it here. I'm on a single strand. Victoria is sitting in her harness up here. This strand isn't even weighted, and there is like some slight slippage there. Like I bet I could feed it through if I like angle it the right way. But essentially, I just wrapped off of my rope. You can say that.
And I'm gonna know that.
Yeah, I just wrapped off of my rope. Really, if we hadn't pre-rigged at all, I would just be on the ground, right? This would just slip all the way through. I'd be on the ground. Bad situation. Because we pre-rigged, that gives us, like, some people are like, oh, now what do you do? Now you're like stuck on one strand. Well, now at least I have options. I'm not just like on the ground, right? At least I'm on this one strand and I can figure out what to do next. And a lot of that is dependent on your route or where you're rappelling, that kind of stuff.
You want
But
to
you
demo
figure
what
it
it
out.
would be like if I wasn't you?
Oh, okay. Scary.
Trying to get hurt?
Trying to get great. Trigger warning. Really? You'd be at the whatever. So yeah, like this is what would happen. Obviously, if I wrap off the end of my rope now, oh my god, I'm so scared. Oh god. Like it instantly releases and you'll just rock it down. Which is not ideal.
So, I have
And
a
the
quick
last
question.
Yeah, Jonas, go for it.
So that can all be prevented by like tying the knot at the end of your rope and like making sure the rope is even.
Tying the knot at the end of your rope, making sure the rope is even. Both of those things are great. Having like a solid middle mark is great.
But even if the rope is tied, or the rope is tied down here, you're still gonna fall a ways.
Well, you wouldn't wrap off of it if that was tied. If you tie solid stopper knots and your ropes are exactly even every time, you don't need a pre-rig necessarily. I very much advocate for it. Kind of going back to habits and building habits. If you're pre-rig rappelling every time and then making the exception not to pre-rig based on whatever factors, I think a lot of accidents would be prevented from pre-rig rappelling.
Okay.
Because essentially, like when you're rappelling, it's after you climbed this sometimes huge route. You're at the top, you're exhausted, you like just did your thing. That's when errors happen. So that's where you're kind of going back to whatever your habits are, whatever your baseline habits are, regardless if you're tired, right? When you're tired, that's when you start going to like how you've trained. And yeah, I pretty much, yes, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Vic? You've climbed with me, you know, I pretty much pre-rappel every time.
Yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
important for it to be a habit because it's just an extra step.
Yeah. Did that answer your question, Jonas?
Oh yeah, it did. Thank you.
Yeah. What are some other notes I have in my thing? Transitions to the next anchor. The last note I like to mention about pre-rigging to people, especially for people that haven't done it. Essentially I rappel down first. I get to that next anchor, I clip this to my next anchor, and then I weight it. That'll test my system. At that point, I'll just feed a big loop of rope to Victoria, who's way above me. And she doesn't even need to hear me say off rappel or whatever. I don't even really need to yell anything. As soon as she can start going, then she can start going. One of my pet peeves is people yelling across canyons or like just really hard to hear each other. And they're like, you can start rappelling now. Okay, you are good to. They're just like screaming a bunch of words. It's like you can go on rappel, off rappel, or something like that. Or you just don't even need to say anything if you're pre-rig rappelling, because once I'm all the way down, Victoria can feel that she can start going, and then she can just start rappelling. You don't need to wait until my belay device is fully off of the rope to start going. You just start going. And then an additional note on that, sometimes with pre-rig rappelling, another good habit to get into, I wish I could raise this. Whatever. Just I guess rappelling in general, if this is, I'll use this one. 1 second. The laptop. Okay, if this is the rope that I just rappelled down on, one other habit that I love to mention to people that you can do in your own climbing is if I get down to this anchor, I clip into it, Oh, this is actually perfect. So at this point, I'm at the next anchor. This makes sense for a transition. I just had to incorporate this other rope. So at this point, I'm at this next anchor. I clip in, I feed a big loop of rope. Victoria can start coming down. One other note, maybe I'm like giving her a firefighter fillet from down below. One other cool little trick you can do is feed out, again, another big loop of rope and just tie a bite knot. And then what you can do is just clip this to your anchor. And then you can fully go off and you can start doing your next steps. But what that does is it closes the system entirely for Victoria, and it closes it right to the anchor that you're going to. Right? Maybe there's knots at the end of this rope, but they're like way down there. All right, it's going to be a lot more convenient for Victoria. Maybe it's like an overhanging rappel, or it's traversing in from the right or from the left. It'll be really convenient for her. Once she's down, she can use this other side and just start pulling to get herself close to this anchor without me having to like finagle, like pulling the rope and dealing with it in that way. Additionally, while that's happening, that whole system is closed, I can use the end of the rope to start transitioning to our next rappel. So I can start feeding this, right? I can tie that barrel knot at the bottom of my rope. Then when she gets down, when she clips in, I undo this, we pull the rope, and we're off to the next rappel. Watch someone untie because of this. Tie in Clear Creek
because they were screaming in the loud canyon.
Oh yeah.
They took their
they're like
climber off belay while she was still climbing.
God.
And she
That's
was
awful.
like, she was working too. Yeah, I could see her like getting pumped, and I was like, "Oh God, oh no!"
Yeah,
But
and someone else set off belay or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Miscommunication somewhere. Radios are also amazing for that. Some last. Oh no! I have another point too with pre-rigging. You can pre-rig multiple people. So if you're climbing in a party of 3 for some reason, the very bottom person can be rigged, and then the next 2 people can also rig above them. You don't need. It's not just a 2-person thing. So if you're out with 3 people, that'll also work. What kind of questions do people have? Hopefully, maybe people have the skills to practice this in their living room. That would be ideal. Anyone have any clarifying questions before? What do you think about single strand wrapping on a gree-gree? I think that's totally something that people should practice and be comfortable with. I think it's super valuable to be able to single strand rappel using a gree-gree. Additionally, if you pre-rig rappel and you tie knots in both sides of the rope, then both of those sides are fixed. So if you were in a party of 3, essentially someone could rappel down on either side while the top person is pre-rigged up here. And then it just makes the whole system faster. It's essentially the first 2 people would be simul rappelling, with the benefit of there's someone pre-rigged above them. So if one person makes any mistake, it doesn't influence the entire team. Additionally, on wrapping on a gree-gree and pre-rigging in general, that combination, it makes it so if you drop your ATC, like if you just lose this, unless you know how to make like a carabiner rappel, like improvised rappel, maybe we'll go over that. You're kind of screwed. And that's not the case if you have a gree-gree and you know how to single strand rappel. I know a lot of people in this chat know Gianna. I was at the top of Royal Arches in Yosemite, 15 pitches up. And on our first rappel, she dropped her ATC all the way down the entire climb. But it didn't matter. She had a gree-gree. I just pre-rigged everything, and then she went down first on her gree-gree on one side of the pre-rig. In a single pitch situation, how do you get high enough to test the system? So in a single pitch situation, how do you get high enough to test the system. Like,
Because you're shorter, or the ATC is shorter.
say it. ATC, like here? What do you think? For repelling. ATC. I'm sorry. It says in a single pitch situation, how do you get high enough to test the system for repelling? It's essentially the same thing. Right? If this is a single pitch situation and these are chains or rings or whatever, you can do the same thing. If you're trying to repel on a single pitch, you feed the rope through whatever it is. So single pitch setting, maybe I just tied in. I feed this through, tie a knot. So feed this through. Tie a knot. And then it's the same deal. Put this through. And instead of going to like a second anchor at the bottom, you're just going to the ground. At this point, I feed this up, and then I can start repelling. Add a third hand, and you're off to the races. Essentially, your goal is to have your anchor and your personal anchor longer than what it takes to get your belay device here. Right? There's all this slack where I can test, and then I can take my stuff. The old adage, add before you subtract, is useful here. You want to add all your stuff, test it out, and then once you've tested it, you can take your stuff away. I don't know if that answered your question, Hannah. Another note on rappelling on single pitch climbs, I never rappel on single pitch climbs. I'll pretty much always, and never maybe is a strong word, I'll have to have a very legitimate reason to rappel on a single pitch climb. I'll often / always get lowered, except for maybe some weird extenuating circumstances. Yeah, I'll just clean an anchor and get lowered from it. At this point, a lot of people, guides, route setters, outdoor professionals will advocate for you just lowering off of the ear. And yeah, it might wear down these chains like a little bit, but I'd rather you just do that than futz around trying to learn how to rappel on a single pitch climb. And maybe just support your rebolting funds. Again, that's like a concern with people in regards to that.
Why don't you like simul rappelling?
So simul rappelling often gets practiced by people that are new to climbing and think it's really rad. I certainly had my fair share of simul rappelling. I don't like it because if anything were to go wrong, then both people, like if anything happens catastrophically, then both people fall. If someone wraps off one end of the rope, well, it doesn't matter that the other person had a knot in their side. They're going to wrap off. They're going to essentially do what I just demoed, and the rope's just going to slide through. People often recommend simul rappelling if you're trying to go fast. And I would go up against any simul wrapping team as a pre-rigging team, and I think it would be pretty comparable. If not, pre-rigging would be faster. And again, it's all about habits. So if your habit is simul wrapping every single time because it saves time, that's cool. But the second one of your knots comes undone, then that could lead to a catastrophic failure. So you're trying to just stack the cards in your favor. Simul wrapping as a habit, I don't think really stacks the cards in your favor, which is why I don't like it. I answer that.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, and time saving wise, like me and some people know Charbo. Me and Charbo rappelled 5 pitches in Potrero Chico, wrapped 5 pitches in 17 minutes. That's pulling your ropes and everything. It's like 3-minute splits. That was fast.
I think we beat someone on Royal Arches.
Yeah, and they were silent. Yeah,
Every time we were wrapping so much faster.
yeah, it's fast. Like when you think about it, what takes the most time when you're rappelling isn't actually going down. If you have gloves on and you're just ripping down the rope, it takes like 10 seconds to go down a 30-meter pitch. Whereas when you think of all of the time it takes to set up your stuff, that's when it takes a while. So if you're pre-rigging, you're setting up all that stuff at the same time, which saves a lot of time. And as soon as you get to the anchor, your next person's going. You're not trying to figure out how to both clip to the anchor at the same time and all that stuff. Okay, we're going to finish this up. So key takeaways. Pre-rigging is rad. You should practice pre-rigging, hopefully in your living room before going outside and trying it at a crag. Some additional resources. I have this all outlined in that sheet that I sent everyone, but SPI manual is great. Mountain guide manual is great. VDIF is sweet. Hiring a guide is great. Additionally, I linked a podcast that I think is really cool, and it talks about habits. It's called Starlight and Storm, and I linked the specific episode. Did you listen to it? Oh, you gotta listen to it. It's all about habits and how to stack the cards in your favor in the mountains, and it's really makes you think. And then we'll end with the rappelling riddle. Has anyone heard this rappelling riddle before? Maybe. Vic has. Everyone has probably. Okay, so here's the riddle, and you can think on it and then email me or text me the answer. You have 2 40-meter rappels you have to do. You have your entire rappelling kit, which includes, right, a quad, third hand, personal anchor system. You have a knife, and maybe you have your chalk bag too. That's a red herring. How do you do 2 40-meter rappels and you have a 60-meter rope? That's essentially all I got for you. I'll let y'all just think on that, because if you know me, I've never given the answer away to a riddle. But thank you all for coming. Hopefully you learned something from this question. And yeah, go outside and climb while it's still warm. Hopefully it hasn't fully snowed on you yet. Last minute things, Vic. Do you want to say bye to all of our friends?
Bye, friends.
Bye, friends. Okay. Thanks.